I hadn't realized it at the time, but I was 42 years of age and had been coaching 18 years and only been associated with 4 winning seasons in 18. And then to have them give me the job, I mean, it shows you how bad the job was, I guess. But BYU had a long history of not a lot of success in football.
To turn his program around, Lavelle Edwards devised a dramatic new plan. While everyone else in college football ran offenses like the veer and the wishbone, BYU installed a drop-back passing game. Sports writers called it folly, but Lavelle was crazy like a fox. Edwards selected a young assistant coach named Dewey Warren to design the new attack. Ironically, in its first season, the new offense produced the nation's leading rusher in Pete Van Valkenburg. In year number 2, the Cougars added a drop-back quarterback prospect to the roster. He was a Joe Namath clone named Gary Scheide. The aerial attack now had its trigger man. In just 2 seasons, Scheide rewrote the Brigham Young record book and had the Cougars challenging for a WAC championship.
Of all the quarterbacks, he was the most streaky, I guess. I don't know if that's a word or not, but he would go like 4 or 5 in a row and not complete a pass, and then he'd hit 8, 9, 10 in a row. He would be absolutely brilliant, and then he would go cold and at times. But when he was hot, he was about as good as anybody we've had.
After a rocky start in 1974, the Cougar offense began a hot streak of its own. At mid-season, BYU found itself uncharacteristically in the heat of the WAC title hunt. 3 straight victories set up a memorable confrontation with perennial power, Arizona State. There was a real feeling that this could be the year. But it would not be easy. The Sun Devils' WAC reputation was on the line. In the 4th quarter, the Cougars searched within themselves for something extra and discovered the heart of a champion. Their quest for victory would not be denied. On that day, BYU ended Arizona State's domination of the WAC, 21-18.
That represented the first major breakthrough that we had here in our program since I'd been a head coach. Because from then on, for all intents and purposes, we were going to, we would be the conference champions.
2 weeks later, they made their conference title official with a 48-20 triumph over Utah. The Doormats were now champions. Indeed, a new era had dawned. (1975) marked the collegiate debut of Gifford Nielsen. Growing up in Provo, he never wanted to play anywhere else but BYU.
I can remember as a young boy going over to an old stadium they had over where the players practice now and watch football games, actually dig a hole in the side of a mountain and sit there. It was called the Knot Hole Gang, and watch football.
Gifford's childhood dream of starring for BYU began to fade as he was benched after a lackluster performance in his very first varsity action. Fortunately for him and BYU, he got a second chance.
We were losing to New Mexico. We were on the verge of losing our fourth straight game to open up the season. And Coach Edwards, after the first two quarterbacks couldn't get it done, came to me. I was the third string quarterback, and I was right down here on the field. He said, "Giff, let's get warmed up and see what you can do again."
This time, Gifford got it done, leading the Cougars to a dramatic victory over the Lobos. In proving himself, Nielsen had unveiled the awesome firepower of BYU's offensive arsenal. With Nielsen at the helm, BYU's passing game captured the fancy of the nation's football fanatics. The Cougars took the WAC by storm in 1976, winning 9 games and their second conference title in 3 years. Nielsen, who had always looked the part, was officially named All-American. In 1977, Coach Edwards sensed his team's enormous potential. 3 lopsided victories propelled the Cougars into the nation's top 20. Gifford Nielsen, who must have been wearing a bright red S on his chest, displayed seemingly superhuman qualities. He was turning the Heisman Trophy race into a runaway. But fate was to play a cruel trick. Just 4 weeks into his senior season, his career was cut short by a devastating knee injury.
The doctor said he's played his last game for you. This knee is torn up. I said, and others said, we've seen our last great quarterback for another 20 years.
The hopes and dreams of Cougar fans were shattered. Little did they know that the next great arm was already at BYU.
We knew we had a young quarterback at that time that was going to be pretty good, we thought, a kid named Mark Wilson. And the first game that Mark played after Gifford's injury was against Colorado State. And rather than dropping straight back, we did a lot of play action and rolling out. Mark Wilson threw 7 touchdown passes when we took him out of the game late in the third quarter. And he thought life was pretty easy. The following week, we go to Laramie, and Wyoming had a very, very mediocre team so far. And Mark threw, I think, 5 or 6 interceptions that day, and we hung on to win 10-7. So he was on both ends of the spectrum in the first 2 games that he played.
What Brigham Young fans didn't know was in the 1 week before Wilson's first start, Lavelle Edwards and quarterback coach Doug Scoville extensively rewrote the offensive playbook.
I was an unproven sophomore who'd never played, and this was a quarterback coach who had a tremendous reputation with developing quarterbacks. And I think what people usually do in those situations is say, you're going to do it my way, and if you're not any good at it, I'll get somebody that is. And his approach was entirely different. His approach was, I have a number of things here. Tell me what you like to do and what you're good at, and we'll do those things. And that's exactly what he did. And we stopped doing a lot of things that Gifford did because, frankly, he was better at them than I was. And we focused from that time on things that I was good at. And consequently, we did do well, and I did well, and we kept going forward.
With Mark Wilson at the controls, the offense never missed a beat. Future NFL All-Pro Todd Christensen quickly became Wilson's favorite target. During Mark Wilson's era, BYU established itself as the dominant force within the Western Athletic Conference.